it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out. In today's episode, I get to talk with Robert Herbst, who is a youth sport coach, personal trainer, power lifter, very accomplished power lifter. I believe he goes through, all the things he's competed in. He also supervised drug testing at the Rio Olympics. So done lots of really cool things. We talk a lot about sport, coaching. We definitely talk about doping, drug testing, all those things. So he shares lots of great personal experience because he has been in the fitness industry for a long time. So have a lot of great insight in all of that. So check it out, and I'm sure you're going to learn something. And if not, it definitely is just a fun interview. I just want to thank Robert again for taking the time to talk to me during, what was it? I think it was, some baseball game. He was talking to me when he could have been watching sports. So thank you again for taking the time to chat with me. This was so fun. I feel like I learned a lot, and definitely, my curiosity about drug testing and how, all of that goes was definitely satisfied for now. Feel free to check out his website at weightlifterusa.com. It's in the show notes. If you want to find it on there, you can find every way you can contact Robert, all information about him and what he's doing. So any information that you need is there. So I guess if you want to start by introducing yourself so we know who we're talking to.
Okay. Excuse me. My name is Robert Herbst, and I've had a long and successful career as a power lifter. To date, I've won 19 world championships. I've won 50 U.S. national championships. I'm a member of the AAU Strength Sports Hall of Fame. Along the way, I've learned a lot about health and fitness, not only for my own benefit, but for the benefit of others. You should know I'm also an attorney by training and graduate of Columbia Law School. Practiced for many years as a lawyer. I'm involved in the attorney well-being movement because attorneys, the legal profession is full of stress, and we're trying to get attorneys to feel less stress by getting more physically active. I've also been active in coaching a wide variety of youth sports, everything from soccer, baseball, basketball, lacrosse, ice hockey, wrestling. I guess I should mention I was a collegiate wrestler and also played lacrosse in college. I went to Trinity College. And then I've, because of my organizational ability as an attorney and my ability to do, for lack of a better word, really grown-up things, not just with weights, I've helped to run the Special Olympic World Games powerlifting venue. I ran the Maccabi Games basketball venue. I helped to run the wrestling venue at the 2012 London Olympics. I helped to supervise the drug testing at the Rio 2016 Olympics. Was chosen to have the same role in 2020 in Tokyo, but ultimately wound up not going because the Japanese government wouldn't grant visas to foreigners such as myself due to COVID. So that, in a nutshell, is it. I guess for your purposes, I have a big background in performance-enhancing drugs, both having been in gyms, especially in the really bad times of, the 1980s, but also being involved in drug testing world-class athletes at the Olympics, and then competing myself as a drug-tested athlete at a high level. So that's it in a nutshell.
I feel like I had a I thought that I was gonna know what you were going to say just from our emails, but I realized there was so much more that I did not know. So that was a great intro. I do want to ask you a little bit about powerlifting though, before we actually get into the things I said we were going to talk about. Do you have a favorite lift? And if
Um,
so, what is it?
yes and no. I used to really love bench press and be
Oh,
really good at it. And being starting lifting as a teenager and then in my 20s or something, bench press was a really cool lift to have. As I've gotten older, had some injuries. My bench press isn't as good as it once was. I always had a really good deadlift too, so probably deadlift and bench press are kind of tied.
oh my
I don't
gosh.
like squat. I don't like
No.
squat as much.
Oh,
But
well,
bench press
okay,
is
so
right up there. That's one of those, as you go through life, nobody asks, how much do you squat? But, you go to a gym or, I used to be, a lifeguard when I was in college or, people walking around there. Everyone's like, how much you bench? How much you bench?
right.
They all want to like, you know, how much you, and like, they all want you to make a muscle, bicep pose and, how much you bench. So
Right.
that was, really cool growing up in your, teens and 20s, have, big chest and big bench, and because nobody goes, oh well, how much do you deadlift, unless they're really serious and into sports. So it's not, that was kind of more fun. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, unless you go to a CrossFit gym and then they're gonna ask you like what's your snatch weight and what's, your clean and jerk and all that stuff, right? But yes, how
Right.
much do you bench? I feel like I've heard that a time or two, and I probably can't bench anything more than the bar. So
Well, it's a start, and not to be condescending, but it's I remember, maybe I should not disclose this, but the first time my wife actually benched an empty Olympic bar, I told my kids, and they were all like thrilled, and they said, "Whoa, she's coming for your records now." So to have a woman who has a lot less natural testosterone than men and a lot less muscle mass, lift probably, a third of their body weight in the bench with the upper body is great. I mean, women can be a lot stronger in squat or deadlift because they have wider hips and they have
right,
their legs are strong. In fact, women have a real advantage over men sometimes in the squat or deadlift, depending upon their style, because they have naturally wide hips. They
oh
don't have the
wow,
upper body though. So,
right. No, I can
yeah,
attest to that. So if I told you
yeah.
squatted the bar, you'd be less impressed than me saying I
Yeah, but
benched the
that's
bar.
good too. And again, and the thing about physical fitness and training and everything is, try to be better than you were. That's progress. I mean, if
Yeah.
your goal is to squat a bar and you've got one of these 20-pound body bars on, if you keep adding, 5 pounds, a week or every couple of weeks, at some point it's going to add up, and then, you know, suddenly you're lifting more than you were, and by dint of that, it's just gonna, by definition, it's gonna mean that you've got more muscle mass and better bone density, and your metabolism's better, and you're burning fat. There's everything that comes along with that. So don't, be shy and condescending, and don't go, oh my God, well, I'm talking to Robert Herbst and he's whatever, but I'm a middleweight. I can talk to super heavyweights who bench, twice what I benched, and it's all relative.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I
So
feel like that kind of naturally leads us into, the lessons that sports teach us, because I feel like that kind of was one right there, right? But can you talk to us a little bit about, especially when you're coaching, um, I guess youth, or even, I don't know if you do coach like, even adults that are newer to lifting or sports. But can you talk a little bit about some of those we kind of mentioned, like quote cliche type lessons, but those positive things that we do learn from sports that, you don't always learn from other things, or you maybe don't learn from other things?
Sure, and just so you know, I mean, I have trained a number of adults. I get contacted, from time to time. People see me on the internet and they want to lose weight or they want to have programs. I've kind of got a following of, women of a certain age, who, as their metabolism naturally slows, want to speed it up and do better. And I've also,
Right.
coached a lot of I'd say a lot, but a number of Olympic level athletes who, do a certain sport but want to get stronger, because it never hurts to be stronger in a sport. I mean, if you're a runner, if you're strong, a marathon runner, their arms chug back and forth, thousands and thousands of times a race. But if their, traps and shoulders and whatever are stronger, they'll have, more endurance. They'll be able to stay upright. They'll have their form better, et cetera. So, every athlete can benefit through strength training, and then everything's different. With a marathon runner, you don't want them to be carrying so much extra mass, but you do want them stronger. And, they'd have a different program than when I work with a wrestler or someone like that. But we did kind of joke, before the call about, what sports, especially youth sports, teaches. As I mentioned, I've done a wide variety of sports. I run my town's local instructional Little League program the last 21 summers. We would have had 22, except we stopped because of COVID. But what you try to teach with kids, and kids are exposed to a lot of things now that maybe they didn't used to be. I mean, kids, who are, 8, 9, 10, 12 now, compared to kids who, are now in their 20s and 30s and grew up before the internet, before there was so much. I mean, there used to be, a baseball game on TV, a local game, or the game of the week, and they'd see, the players. Now, there's all these games and interviews and podcasts, and a player acts badly, and they're an example, whether good or bad. If they're, there's all these controversies about touchdown celebrations, or, someone hits a home run and there's a bat flip, and then they say, well, the old day, Joe DiMaggio never did a bat flip. He just put it down and trotted around the field, So they're exposed to a lot more influences, both good and bad. So it's important as a coach to be able to get in there and kind of, without being didactic, without lecturing, but kind of diffuse the situation and guide them along, as far as sportsmanship and good training. And, for instance, in my summer leagues, there's, no real trash talking. Everybody shakes hands at the end of the game. Everybody exhibits sportsmanship. Everybody, encourages your teammate. A pitcher walks a guy, oh, you suck. We'll go, well, he's trying really hard, and then I explain to kids, for example, that baseball is a humbling game. If you fail 7 out of 10 times, that means you bat 300 and you're in the Hall of Fame. And I go, oh, yeah, wow, okay. So if you strike out, don't feel miserable. If you're a pitcher and you give up runs, every pitcher has an earned run average. That means they give up runs. Same, one of my sons was a goalie growing all the way up and played in college and everything. And I said, to him at one point, Eric, every goalie, even Martin Brodeur, Hasek, or the best in the world, have a goals against average. You're gonna get scored on. The nature of the game.
Right.
So it helps them to have a realistic voice, and I have some street cred because I've been out there in the world and won a lot of stuff, which I don't really brag about or glorify, but they all kind of know it, or they can look me up and it's out there. But what you try to do is teach the kids the right path and the things that sports can harness, such as discipline, determination, realization of goals. I mean, during the summer, which is not a competitive league, I tell them, all right, you're a right-handed batter, bat from the left side, work on your weak side. You you weren't allowed to play infield. All right, so play infield. Try stuff. They say, can we bunt? I said, absolutely, bunt. Work on stuff, work on weaknesses. And by the way, it's like politically incorrect sometimes to go, oh, we can't call them weaknesses. It's not a weak side, it's a non-dominant side. But that's like ridiculous. I mean,
Right.
if an athlete has a weakness, work on it, make it a strength. Like in lacrosse, you throw from the right side, throw from the left side. You never, you can't even tell what's your normal side. You just practice it again and again and again and again, and then you don't have to think about it. So there's all these things, out there about for youth sport, how to accomplish a goal, how to be a better player, um, how to be stronger and fitter. We always start every practice with calisthenics, with jumping jacks and stretching. And I tell them, you get used to this now because when you get to the high school in our town, our high school's got a good program and they've won, several state championships. We're in New York State. You're going to be doing this. And the same thing with, even if you don't play baseball, a lot of kids play multiple sports, soccer, basketball, hockey, what have you. You got to get used to practicing. You got to get used to being, well, I'll do jumping jacks, and some kid will be like way off, like, like 20 jumping jacks ahead and whatever. I said, no. You're part of a team. You're part of a unit. Now and they start to get it. And they start to buy in because the more you say it, the more it sticks. And I say it in a non-confrontational way. I say it kind of, jokingly, you gotta, I say, I'll say, you can't be counting weird because you'll confuse him, and I'll point to the guy next to him. I'll go, oh yeah. And then we tease the guy next to him who's like a total foil, and then whatever, And then, actually some of the drills where we had jumping jacks, I said, today we're going to do 20. You guys all know 20? Yeah, and they go, yeah. And they go, good. That's my school taxes in action. And then, then I'll pick a kid and I go, you sure you know 20? Because we had a kid last year who didn't know 20 and we went up to triangle. What? And they all thought that was hilarious. So we're all counting, airplane, triangle, whatever, so, and then they forget that they've done 20 or 30 jumping jacks. They're totally exhausted and breathing hard because they're all, laughing that they got up to triangle and next week we're going to do palm tree. Really? Like, yeah. So you guys got to get ready because next week we're going up the palm tree. And they're like, oh, that's great, coach. So you just do the lessons in the right spirit without making it, confrontational or overly instructional. And it sticks and they have fun. And at the end of the season, they're doing twice as many jumping jacks, twice as many push-ups as they were, And I'll walk down the street and I've had, parents come up to me and go, hey, I reckon, because I don't know a lot of the kids. There's a lot of kids, and they're young and nameless. And, kids come up to me, they're 6'2" with beards. Really? You used to be that? But I've had parents come up to me and go, oh, my son's playing for the University of whatever, or, this week my son's in a tournament down in Georgia, and like, my wife says she gets stopped all the time. Oh, you're Robert Herbst. Yeah, my son's, so, the stuff sticks.
Right.
So you do it the right way. And even though they're cliches, sportsmanship, accomplishing goals, getting better, dealing with frustration, if you talk about it the right way, where kids kind of enjoy it, they just get it better osmotically, as it were.
Yeah. No, and I mean, even as you're like explaining through how you're talking to the kids, I can totally picture in my head like interactions you're having with your athletes, and I can see how those things come across and how you're able to reach them just by the way that you speak. So yeah, no, I think all that is great, and yes, cliche, but also real and important.
Sure.
Going on the other
Yeah, well,
side though,
it helps to have been, an athlete or still be an athlete. It even helped at the Olympics with the drug testing. For example, most men my age are not fit, but Olympic athletes look at me and they go, oh, he's one of us. I mean, I remember at Rio, the South Korean wrestling team sent their interpreter over and she asked me, like, they want to know who you used to be, what did you do, because,
right.
and then, so when I'm sitting down and testing with him, I'm not I am gray haired, comes with the territory, but, I got a lot of street cred. So, and that carries over, and also they can tell right away that I've been there. I understand. I mean, if an athlete in the Olympics has to go to a drug test, but he's got to weigh in first, and he's so dehydrated he can't produce a sample, well then, we understand that. Obviously you have to weigh in, so then we follow him and he weighs in and then he rehydrates and then he produces a sample, and, as opposed to just being, totally, doctrinaire and, not understanding, the needs of the athletes. I think people at any age, either you're 9 years old or 19 or 29, they understand and appreciate empathy, especially when they're trying to, sports is hard. This is, you know,
Yeah.
I could tell you, baseball is humbling. Football, humbling. You go out there and lay it on the line, and in front of people. Your parents are in the stands. Your girlfriend's in the stands. Your classmates are in the stands. It's like, you know, sports is hard, so they want someone who understands that. And trust me, I've failed plenty of times. We got pictures of it. So, every time I took second in the World Championships, that means somebody else beat me. And I
Right.
have. So, but that's sports.
No, exactly. And I feel like because you've been there and everybody that you interact with on that level kind of knows that, like, what you're talking about. You've experienced these things. You're not just saying this from an authoritative standpoint or something. I imagine when you're
Right.
talking to athletes about doping and things like that, that it also is received better because they know what you're talking about. You're not just saying, like, don't do drugs, kids, right? Can you
Right. I'm
talk?
not some, like, with all due respect, I'm not some skinny guy or out of shape guy saying, this is bad. I'm not McGriff the crime dog saying, this is bad, don't do it. I stand there and I go, I've been in gyms a lot. I've seen whatever. A, they're bad, you're gonna get caught and punished, but B, this is why it won't work for you right now. You're 18 years old, and this is just not gonna work for you. So so rationale, fits in too.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, and maybe it is just as simple as telling them, like, it just isn't going to work for you when you are young. But like how you talk to, if you talk to the young athletes, especially about why they shouldn't be using performance enhancing drugs.
Right. And there's a lot of information out there, and they have health class in school and everything. And then
Right.
I've told them, especially, kids who are going through puberty, 14, 15, 16, 18, I tell them that their natural hormone levels, testosterone, are the highest they're ever going to be naturally. And in fact, I've joked with some of them. I even joked, with my son who's playing, in college. I said, if men my age could milk you like a rattlesnake for venom, we would. You've got so much of this stuff. And I say, so one, anything you take is just going to be added. It's not even going to be additive. It's going to not do anything, but also it'll potentially screw up your system. I mean, right now your body is going through puberty and making testosterone like crazy, So, but if you start taking artificial drugs that have, anabolic and androgenic, and I explain the difference. Androgenic is sex characteristics, anabolic is growth. It's going to shut off your normal functioning, and you might not get it back, or you might not get it back the right way because your body's reading the hormone levels. It's going to stop making testosterone because you got a certain blood level of whatever. And then if you stop taking it, you may, you may not get it back right. I mean, there's a famous bodybuilder who I will shall remain nameless, but he went on to, fantastic, a number of them have been in, TV and movie careers and all that.
Mhm.
So, you can narrow it down, but when he started having kids, we laughed. We went, seriously? Those things turned back on, he had
Right.
kids. So, I mean, and I gotta tell you, weightlifters, bodybuilders, they're very elemental people. Yeah, like, yeah. So, and the same thing, when I talk to college athletes, I've gone up to my alma mater and other schools, address the wrestling team and what have you. They want the straight dope. Pardon the pun, the straight dope. They don't want to get caught and punished. And I also tell them that anything you do, you're a you're schmuck little 16-year-old in the gym. You're a 20-year-old college, sophomore. You know, nothing you can do is so sophisticated that you won't be caught. It's just that simple. I mean, we got, tests that pick up Russians, 8 years after they gave a sample. So, you will get caught and the repercussions are horrible because you will no longer be an athlete. You may no longer be a student, and if athletes is that important for you, and by then they've already gotten the predicate that there are no, shortcuts in sport. You want to be bigger and stronger, lift weights. It's that simple. And support it with proper nutrition and proper sleep and all that, and it'll come. You don't need to take the shortcut, especially if the shortcut can harm you, both physically, psychologically, and legally. And ultimately, you'll be as strong or stronger anyway naturally, because if you take steroids and then you go off steroids, you lose a lot of the gains that you had or that you made. And, so it becomes a vicious cycle. There's lots of people who, take steroids and then go off and suddenly they're weak and small again. And, some of them take more steroids and go back on it. It's almost like both a physical and a, mental, emotional addiction. So instead of going up there and saying, don't do drugs and saying, heroin and meth and whatever bad for you, I give them like plausible reasons. All right. I'm not telling you not to take steroids because it's illegal. By the way, it's illegal and you're going to get in trouble and you're never going to play again. But even if you do take it and somehow manage to evade, all this sensitive, sophisticated testing, that's going to mess you up. And the whole idea is not to mess you up. And then you point to things, you point to the controversies that Barry Bonds has, last week Aaron Judge hit a home run record and a lot of people are saying, that's the clean home run record. And then people go, yeah, but Barry Bonds hit more and everyone's taking it. But it's still, a taint on you. It's a scarlet letter around you. As well as, other people of that era who were taking, performance enhancing drugs. And then there's enough, people failing tests, here and there that people are getting suspended, football players and, minor league baseball players rehabbing from injuries and things like that. The consequences are bad. There was a guy, this year in, excuse me, in Major League Baseball who, failed a drug test and was, banned for 81 games, which is half the season. And, A, he loses out on millions of dollars. B, he's not helping the team he was, hired to help. And he's basically a disgrace. And even if he comes back, it happens to him again, he's gone for a year and then he could be gone again, And then like people with like Alex Rodriguez have taken a long time to rehabilitate their reputation. I mean, Alex Rodriguez is a great player and a personable guy, and he's an announcer. He went out with J-Lo and all this good stuff. But, for people who are into sports, he does have this over him, and he'll never be in the Hall of Fame. He hit 696 home runs, and he's never going to be in the Hall of Fame. People are just not going to vote him in.
Right. So I do have some questions about, and this is probably just like my own curiosity about the drug testing process and things like that. But my first one is, so you had said that like nothing, especially like a 16-year-old, like you said, nothing they can do is going to, be more sophisticated than what WADA can test for. But I feel like there's a lot of people who think that people, everyone's cheating, or most people are cheating. They're just doing something that we aren't testing for, or they're cycling on and off and all those things. I guess, like, what would you say to someone who thinks that, like, is that actually possible that everyone is cheating and they're just doing something different? Or is that more just like, we want to assume that people just can't be this good?
Yeah. Well, I'll be, candid. There is a lot of cynicism out there. And we say that, if you get caught, you're sloppy or stupid.
Okay.
Meaning, assume everyone's taking, but you're sloppy and stupid and you got caught.
Hmm.
But the testing regimes are getting better and better. I mean, they have samples now, for instance, from Beijing 2008, from London 2012, where over the years the technology has gotten better, and now they can detect um, stuff that they couldn't when there was a race. And I think Usain Bolt lost a relay medal from 2012 because one of the runners on his relay tested positive 6 or 8 years after the fact. They, the test got better, and
Right.
they tested his sample, which was frozen, and this stuff showed up. And instead of Usain Bolt, who had this perfect record of 3 or 4 gold medals in Olympics for 3 Olympics, suddenly lost one. I mean, he was clean. And the other 2 guys were clean, but there was a guy who was positive, and so there's real world consequences to this. Look at the controversy over the Olympic figure skating from the most recent Winter Olympics. I mean, they still
Right.
haven't awarded medals in the team competition because Russia is screwing around, with whether this girl tested positive and whether it was really her fault and whatever. So you get people who it's the greatest moment of their life potentially, and they couldn't stand on the medal stand, on with the hand over their heart and the anthem playing and tears going down, and they have a remote of their family back in Oshkosh, all cheering and crying. They were deprived of that.
Right.
And if in 2 years they get mailed a medal, all right, well,
It's
that's really
different.
great. Or if in 2 years there's like a press conference and they go to Colorado, or wherever they're going to hold it, and there's like a little ceremony, and by then they've been out of skating for 6, 8 years. They're married, they got a gut, they've got they're an accountant, or whatever, or a skating teacher. It's not quite the same. So there's real world consequences for real world athletes who get deprived of their moments because other people have cheated. You're probably aware of the controversy around, the East German swimmers in 1972, 76, where there's American swimmers who did fantastic and all took silver. It's a Cornelia Ender who, if you look at her, was like, I mean, had a huge masculizing traits because
Right.
she was taking primitive steroids and lots of testosterone, and who later on sued the East German government because she's got all sorts of health problems and stuff. But for the rest of her life, these American swimmers were not known as Olympic gold medalists. Well, they took second, and there's prejudice to that. So there's, the goal is to create a level playing field. You get out there, and for instance, you see in some of these Olympics, a guy from a smaller country, will win a medal or a gold medal. And he can do that because on his natural talent and ability and discipline, because there was testing and it was a fair regime, as opposed to having a Russian in there who tested, who used stuff and then masked the test and didn't test positive. I mean, I'll tell you a true story. I was captain of the U.S. powerlifting team where we competed against the Soviet Union in 1990. And we competed in Leningrad, now known as St. Petersburg, and in Moscow. And we took an overnight train from Leningrad to Moscow. And, I sat there talking with the coach of the Soviet team and an interpreter. And because I was the captain of the team, as with another guy, we're his new best friends, as a gift, he gave me steroids. He gave me a box of steroids with Russian writing on them and stuff. And then he gave me, and I still have it because I wrote it down because, through the interpreter, a protocol about how to take the steroids and then come off the steroids and retain a lot of the gains, but not test positive because you've been off the steroids for a long time. And this was 1990,
Wow.
before the testing got a lot better. I mean, this is how prevalent it was. And it's me and another American, and a couple. They hand us these boxes, and we like look at each other, going like, "Whoa." Yeah. So some people have a completely different attitude, and then you get to Sochi or wherever where the Russians cheated. They put a hole in the wall, and people were exchanging clean samples for dirty samples. And as Putin wanted gold medals, so he could tell its people what a great guy he was, what a great country Russia was. And there's a lot at stake here. National pride, money. In some of these Eastern European countries, especially, if you win a medal, you get a coaching position, you get a house, you get a car, you get a job. I mean, there's a lot at stake here. I mean, I did one of the doping tests for one of the boxing divisions, and I remember I followed them from the ring to the to the press conference and then to the drug test. But we watch them to make sure they don't leave town or they don't take a masking substance or something like that. Anything they drink is controlled or whatever. I remember the silver medalist, the guy that lost in the finals, in the middle of the press conference, the president of Colombia called and said he was giving him a house. And everybody's like, "Oh wow, this is great!" I mean, he was happy. The Colombians were happy. I mean, there's a lot at stake here. So there's certainly a lot of pressure. The same thing with baseball or football. Guys are signing for or basketball, multiple tens, 20s, $30 million a year. They get injured, they want to recuperate faster. If they start to get old and their swing slows down, they want more muscle mass and better reflexes. It's very tempting to try to cut corners and take performance-enhancing drugs because there's a lot at stake. And if you can somehow evade the test or think you can evade the test, there's a lot of pressure to that, especially in places like Russia, which keeps getting banned from the Olympics, and people can only come not under their flag but under their Olympic committee. I mean, everybody knows what they're doing. They try to evade the sanctions. Where the state is sponsoring the cheating, there's a lot of temptation. There's a lot of upside, and if the state is protecting you, you can really do it. I mean, again, look at that Russian skating girl. She's 15 years old, probably didn't know what she was taking. She supposedly was taking her grandfather's heart medicine. And there's no reason a 15-year-old girl should be taking that drug. Or should be in her blood. I mean,
right.
Unless you, and some of the things stretch plausibility. What was she, was she eating her grandfather's food? Did she kiss him on the lips? I mean, all this good stuff. And then there's other people who have defenses. There's defenses. They ate tainted meat. There's been a couple of American athletes who, claim they ate tainted pork or beef that had high steroid levels in them. Because the meat came from Mexico, and they track it back, and in Mexico they feed that to the livestock. So then you got to be really careful how, what you eat and what you, what you do.
Well, and that was going to be my next question was, can you accidentally, like how likely is it that you accidentally ingest those things or get those things in your system? Because I'm also thinking of a few examples I've heard before of like, no, I kissed my fiance who was taking some supplement and now it's shown up on, my drug test or whatever. And I really didn't do it on purpose. Like, how likely really are those things if you could guess?
Well, I mean, it's hard to quantify, but there are instances. I mean, they've done studies, for example, with married couples, and presumably certain substances can be transmitted through sexual intercourse.
Oh wow!
And get in their get it in their bloodstream. They've done, small studies, but controlled studies of, consenting adults. They always say that they're married, so no one can say anything. So, I mean, it can happen. The, there's landmines everywhere. If you eat, tainted meat, you can get it. The thing is, an athlete under WADA's policies is responsible for what they put in their body. Presumably, you should know if your boyfriend's taking medication, your husband's taking medication, wife's taking, whatever, you should be aware of what she is taking. I mean, it's on you. To avoid, incidental, incidental or accidental ingestion. I mean, there's a lot of prescription drugs where if you take them, they say, wash your hands after taking. So you don't infect, because they're bad and can infect children, or they can infect, pregnant women or what have you. So there's a lot of stuff out there that's, just in the normal course. Don't take this drug. It's, bad for your wife, even though you're trying to cure a condition. So, it's on you, it's on the athlete. It's harder if you stop by a food truck and, by the Tex-Mex border there and eat Mexican food, which was this woman's defense, which, got shot down, but it was their defense. And they, tracked down, the wholesaler and where the meat came from and, and all that. And yeah, Mexican foods, Mexican pork has this stuff in it, makes the pigs grow faster. So when you say how likely, I mean, stuff happens, but it's on you.
Right.
If I'm a woman athlete and my husband is taking certain things and having intercourse with me, I need to know what he's taking. And then perhaps change behavior, have protected sex, or what have you. I mean, the things are all out there. I mean, there was tennis players whose images are very important, are taking anti-baldness medications, and that baldness is based upon the receptors of dihydrotestosterone in the scalp and all that, so it mediates the influence and of testosterone and can be seen as a masking agent. They apply for what's known as a TUE, a therapeutic use exemption. So if you're on the tennis tour and you're trying, in your late 20s, early 30s, and your hair's starting to thin, and you start taking stuff that affects the influence of dihydrotestosterone in your scalp, you have a good doctor and you apply for a therapeutic use exemption, and arguably it should be granted. You don't wait until you test positive, because then by then all hell's broken loose. Excuse me. And the real repercussions are big, but you should know what you're doing, especially at high levels. And
right.
Again, but the onus is on the athlete.
Exactly. Well, and that kind of leads to my last question. And I don't know if you have any comments on this or not, but because I'm a runner, of course, I'm always trying to bring up Alberto Salazar and the Oregon Project and all those things, because I just can't help myself. But do you have any thoughts on the whole Alberto Salazar WADA ban situation? Just because it is, I want to say like unprecedented, because I don't think anything like that has happened before for a coach to be banned for, I guess, drug use, but none of the athletes actually were in trouble for doping, if I have all of the information correct. But I just didn't know if that's something you've ever thought of or cared to think of.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's at many levels it's a pity. I mean, Alberto Salazar personally was a terrific runner. He won like 3 or 4 New York marathons, and drove himself to the point of, the legend, near death at a couple of
Dying,
them.
right? Yeah.
He'd cross the finish line and he'd collapse and he'd be in a tent and giving him IVs, and he went to the limit. Now, when he coaches youth, and there's been some runners who I believe, having read, public sources, I believe he's, ruined their career, and that's the allegations, because he expects the same level of commitment and sacrifice from them as from himself. And that can be dangerous. I mean, that's one of the things, like, when I coach, I mean, I know I've accomplished a lot of stuff, and I know, I'm good, but you can't expect, everyone to be at that level, especially, I apologize for the dinging. I'm getting a lot of texts apparently. Um, uh, you can't expect that from youth or, young athletes in their, teens, early 20s, who are very, malleable. And, some of the things he did, or it's alleged that he did, calorie restriction and causing injuries and overtraining and making them take stuff.
Right.
It's, I mean, there's a lot there and a lot to unpack, and obviously in the testing and the whatever, they found a lot.
Yeah.
So, it's an unfortunate situation. I think it's a case of a guy, just like the Russians, who are more concerned with the outcome than with the process. And especially since the process, if you do it properly, can give you the same outcome. It just takes longer.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like that's actually a great place for us to end. But Robert, this has been so fun and so informative. Can you just tell everybody where they can find you if they are looking to get some more information, or, training or anything like that? But where can we find you? And I'll obviously link it in the notes.
Sure. You can, obviously Google my name, Robert Herbst, Herbst, and powerlifting, and it'll come up, and there's lots of articles quoting me, and lots of links and stuff. Also have a website. It's weightlifter, USA.com, and it's W and the number 8, and there's LFTER, USA.com. So you can just, Google that. And my son thought that up when he was like 8, and I had to do it. I also have a license plate that says that. It was time to renew my license plate, and I said, should I get a personal plate? And he went, how about weight with W8? And that was like so clever for an 8-year-old. So suddenly that became like my logo, and people see me driving around town like that and go, oh, wow, yeah, look at that. That's really good. I've had people come up to me and go, I saw the greatest license plate. You should get it. It was W8. I said, that is me.
That is mine, wow. Right?
So, just Google me, Herbst, Robert, powerlifting. That's the easiest thing. And all sorts of stuff will come up. And, I'm happy to address people's situations with correspondence. As I said, a lot of people in different walks of life reach out to me with questions. Youth athletes, men, women, as they're aging and their metabolism is slow and they lose muscle. And they want to, get back into it or get back in the shape they were in, when they were in college. There's a lot you can do, and it's never too late. That's the thing about fitness. It's never too late. I mean, they have nanogenarians who've gotten stronger just by lifting weights. So, anything you do, any activity, can make you stronger and better and, more coordinated, give you better functional strength. So, you shouldn't be shy. You shouldn't be afraid that, these guys are hulking around the gym or you don't know what to do or whatever, because, kind of like when we talked about, you and, lifting a bar, a 45-pound bar, if that's better than what you did, that's great. And who cares, what other people think or what other people do? it's all you. Frankly, you go to a gym anyway, people are all self-obsessed and they're not watching what you're doing anyway. So people should just go in and not be shy.
Yeah. Well, Robert, this was so fun. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, Tori. I enjoyed it a lot. I hope it's always great to help get the message out there of drug-free sport and clean sport and a level playing field.
Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you can do for a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Make sure you check out social media, our website, any of those things. If you have questions, comments, interview requests, feel free to email me at marikeyrunclub@gmail.com.